All right, back on TYT Sports. We got one more clip for, and we're shooting it Monday. I don't know. You know what's so funny? I put and post these clips, right? I plug and place and where they go, and every time I sit here on Monday morning, I go, I don't know if it's going to be Monday or Tuesday. I do know. I do know when it's going to be.
And we also say the day is almost as like we're a calendar for the viewers that are coming in, they're watching and go, it's Monday. And I'm like, oh, it's Monday. Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, they're fucking miserable at work, and they're sitting there going like, you know what I need? I need some Joe Rogan and his comments on UFC 209. Here's his quote from the Fight Companion podcast that came out most recently. UFC 209 is coming up, but it's not in Stockton. That shit is unconscionable. They had one opportunity ever in the history of the UFC to do it. I planned episode 911 of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast to be Alex Jones. They should have planned episode 209 to be in fucking Stockton with Nick and Nate Diaz. I guarantee you that shit would have gotten 2 million pay-per-view buys. Francis, agree or disagree that UFC 209 with Nick Diaz versus GSP as a headlining fight, alongside Wonderboy and Woodley too, as a 2 million pay-per-view selling card?
I think it would be a great event. I don't think it would sell.
Buy or sell 2 million.
Nah, lower.
1.75.
1.5 maybe? Ooh. I don't know if it would hit 2 million pay-per-view buys. Okay, I'm not going to beat around the bush here and say that like I'm going to portray Stockton to be this hub of fighting. They produce great fighters, but they don't hub an environment where people are like, we got to go and watch this fight in Stockton. Not the way that Vegas, New York, and that's not an insult, that's just the way that things are, unfortunately. If they build up the city and to the extent as which we can imagine they could host an event that would attract so many people to come to that event in that area, then yeah, when we get to that point, I'll admit it. But if you're telling me that people go to Vegas and New York and they're going just for the fighting and they're not going for the experience, I won't believe it. Because yeah, there's a huge audience that will travel all around the world just to watch UFC fights. But there's also a huge amount of that audience that go because they want to experience Vegas or New York or wherever they host the event. And that attracts those type of people that takes the numbers up. Because if you have just the niche fans, you're not going to sell 2 million pay-per-view buys. And there will be people that want to go and see Stockton, but not as many that would want to go and experience the big city or the environment that's being produced. I honestly can't see how people would argue with that, but people probably will.
They will argue because they're going to say that, you know, that hardcore UFC fan base who has been around and will hold it to their heart, and God bless you guys for doing it, that they've known Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz before Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz even were in Twitter feuds and war of words and fightings with the guys of like Conor McGregor before that, when Nick Diaz was fighting GSP like the first time around. So those fans will say, of course we'd go to Stockton, and of course you should. I love people who love sports that much. I do. I criticize them because fans, for the most part, drive me crazy. But at the same time, I'm one at heart as well, and I drive myself crazy. Vegas and New York have an aura to them. So does, by the way, Boston or Chicago. Like, I'm not trying to take away from other major cities in the country. Yes, I think it has a better chance of doing more pay-per-view buys if they did this fight in Miami than it would if they did it in Stockton. And that has nothing to do necessarily with the pay-per-view buys and people watching from home, but there's still an ability. There's a reason why Vegas is a fighting capital of possibly the country. I can't even think of any other place that touches the amount of fights that venues that host fights compared to that of Vegas. Also, the T-Mobile Arena is a beautiful place to go see a fight. Yeah, they built it. They did a great job with it. So I agree with half of the statement. If you put Nick Diaz on this card, and you really did have it against GSP, as Joe Rogan put it in part of the Fight Companion himself, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, I don't want to just take his words and claim they're mine, it's two fighters out the gate as a money fight and a big prize of pride on the line, and it doesn't have anything to do with title contention. Yeah. Because you're talking about two veterans and legends of the sport, and it would probably be a good fight because they probably still hate each other. Yeah. Awesome. But Wonderboy versus Woodley 2 should be fantastic, and it should happen, and it's happening in Vegas. I'll be there on Saturday. I'll try to do some more Facebook Live and press conferences. Hopefully I get a question in this time.
Nice.
It'd be nice. Regardless, they're doing UFC 210 in Buffalo. And Daniel Cormier versus Anthony Johnson 2, it's an amazing, amazing headlining fight. And they're doing it in Buffalo. Yeah. I have nothing against the city of Buffalo.
Exactly, and that's the point.
But why? Why are you doing it in Buffalo?
And that's the point. It's like, yeah, you want to take it to these new places, but also If there is a figure there, like it's a figure that's going to draw in that audience that has such a homegrown base to that place, then yeah, you would expect it to be something that people would be attracted to go and see. You have the Diaz brothers; they represent Stockton, and everything about them is captivating. So there's a lot of people that would want to go and see that. I actually think now, when I think about it, that they would do well as for pay-per-view buys, because people I don't think would be as interested in traveling to Stockton, but I still don't think it would hit a 2 million mark. I think that you're right, the aura that's around these big fights and the atmosphere that's created, that transcends into pay-per-view buys as well, because people want to watch a fight that's happening in Vegas and happening in New York.
I'm also always curious about this, and I wonder how they break this down. So you have to keep in mind that when a bar hosts a fight, like a bar, if you go to a bar to watch it in a Vegas or in New York or anywhere else, that's part of a pay-per-view buy, but it's not considered one.
Yeah.
If you have it on multiple TVs and you're buying it, I think it might count as something like you might be paying for 25 or 100. Or if you're hosting 2,000 people in a live viewing experience, you might be paying for 500 pay-per-view buys, and that's why the ticket to watch it in a viewing party atmosphere could cost the same as a pay-per-view purchase, if not more, and they include drinks and they make all their money back on alcohol. So when you host a fight in Vegas, I guarantee you this, that the pay-per-view buys outside of the arena in Vegas are higher than when it's in maybe New York and other places. You can also bet on it in Vegas, and that has to have some major effect on
people
another niche audience who likes to bet on fights. Of course, it's a small one. But here's my other point, too. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but you'll see what I'm saying. The Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James have put the city of Cleveland on the map, because before LeBron was there, besides the Canton, Canton, there's the Football Hall of Fame and the Music Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There was not just much of a sports atmosphere in Cleveland. LeBron comes, it's now, I mean, we're talking about Cleveland. Cleveland, Ohio has become a sports capital of the country because of LeBron James.
Yeah.
Right? Stipe Miocic, sorry, pronunciation, working on it, guys. Stipe Miocic becomes a title contender, wins his title fight, and they bring a fight to Cleveland, and it does pretty well. But if there was no LeBron, I know people are gonna disagree with this. There is no way Cleveland is a sports capital, and that even though Stipe is from Cleveland himself, that fight doesn't happen in Cleveland.
Yeah.
That hometown fight probably doesn't happen, or if it does, it's on fucking UFC Fight Night.
And
put the UFC Fight Night in Stockton. Put UFC Fight Night in Vancouver and in Buffalo and other smaller places. Don't put the main events in places like Stockton. No offense to Stockton. Don't put it in Hackensack, New Jersey either.
Yeah, it does. That people will think that we're directly trying to be derogatory towards the city, but it's not.
No.
I think that the same idea that you have for something that's never been done in playing on the idea of a person that's associated to that being the main person in the card, that will translate to a larger audience when it's a unique example. We've seen every city, almost every major city in the US now, looking to get on board to host the UFC. We haven't seen it to the major extent across seas. And I think when you look at a Conor McGregor fight, maybe at Ireland's National Football Stadium, or maybe it's somewhere in the UK where it's a huge football stadium sellout, that will translate to an enormous amount of pay-per-view buys, because the one thing is, Conor McGregor, as we know, is transcendent worldwide. Not saying that Nick and Nick aren't, but they're not the same. So I think a lot of people who couldn't travel across to the UK to watch that fight would try to buy it. In the US, I think that would blow through the roof, and they'd buy the pay-per-view buys.
So I'm like, I'm such a nationalist. The USA, all these fights. I love when fights are in Brazil, UK, Rio, and they have these wonderful places to do it, because that's expansion. That's super important, and that's bringing in a total different audience. Although, when they do those fights, there's no time change. They still play it at like 7 o'clock Friday night, or actually there is a time. I mean, of course there's a time change. I just realized that, like, if they have a fight in England, are they fighting at fucking 5 in the morning?
No, it would be more of a day fight here. They were fighting late. Like, so they were fighting maybe at 11 or 12 midnight. It would be 8 hours
such
back.
A fuck you to the fighters. Be like, oh no, we're gonna do it on Cali time, so you're gonna fight at 4 a.m.
And the funny thing is when people were watching those fights back across seas, watching the ones here, my dad will text me, I'm up at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning to try and catch Conor McGregor's fight to stay up. So in a unique example like that, it's never been done before. A football stadium hasn't been filled. So that would attract a huge amount of pay-per-view buys, not just because people wouldn't be able to travel, but because it's something that's different, hasn't been seen before. You want to watch it. You want to either be, if you can't be there, you want to see it. I think that Stockton's a great example, as you were saying. I'm not saying that you'd never look into it. I agree. I think that you take advantage of the fact that there's two big draws in the UFC that have such a homegrown aura about them. Yeah, you have a fight, you have a card there, but it's not going to do as well as I think that Joe Rogan was pushing it to do.
Yeah, but again, I respect the hell out of Joe Rogan, his opinion, and his knowledge of MMA and UFC. I'm not even trying to think. I can't even break down a fight not even close to Joe Rogan. I can't even break down a fight like compared to Joe Rogan's kid, and his kid is like 5 years old. Comment below, like, favorite, and subscribe. It's been a good 45 minutes. It's freezing in the studio. I need more coffee, and I'm hungry. I'll see you guys later.